Alright, today we're just going to walk through how to set up your computer to mine Ethereum as well as Banano. These are two things you should be doing because they're profitable after energy cost. And if you game a couple hours a day, you pause the miner, no big deal, start it back up again. So let's just get right into it. So here's a Google Doc, and I'll put this in the description, but essentially you want to go download a miner. Now, here's Phoenix miner link, here's TREX miner. All the miners are fairly similar. Some report a higher hash rate than other ones, but really where you're going to see your actual hash rate is on whatever pool you go to. You can see the accepted shares, and you want to know your accepted shares in the last 24 hours. It'll kind of even out. Here's a 24-hour average. Those are what you want to base it on. So if you switch a miner, see if your actual share rate changes on the pool's end, what they see, and yeah. Right now I'm using TREX just because I'm testing it. So in order to download TREX or Phoenix miner, the only right place to do that is on the Bitcoin Talk forum. Right now, for whatever reason, their GitHub account has been suspended. I originally downloaded it from their GitHub, but now you can't do that. So you'll be going to this website, I guess. Download the TREX miner, unzip those files.
Download failed.
So then once you've done that, let me just pull up that file. Mining TREX. It'll look something like this. And these are all the different algorithms that your graphics card can mine. Now, how do you choose which one? Well, you go to whattomine.com, enter in your configuration of graphics cards, and click calculate. It takes a couple seconds. Now, let me back up. Originally, you might have like a 480 selected. I don't know what their default is, but where it says 0, put in 1, make sure this is green so it's being calculated or considered in the calculation. Put in all the graphics cards you have, scroll down a little bit, and it'll tell you, okay, $31 a day. Ethereum has been the one to beat. Nice hash Ethereum is generally almost as efficient as straight Ethereum with the whatever algorithm Ethereum uses. I don't know it off the top of my head. Something Nakamoto, who knows. And Firo and Ravencoin, Ethereum Classic seem to be jumping up there. And in fact, I have not seen Firo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, above nice hash yet. And so $30, that's fairly promising. I'll have to look into that. But anyways, this is a great website. You can put in your kilowatt per hour. Here it's around 12 cents. And this bottom number is your actual profitability per day after electricity costs. Here's your net, or not, sorry. Here's your revenue. Here's your net profit. Yeah, that it'll show you what your expected total hash rate should be. 280, that's with certain overclocking settings. I've found that you just have to play around with the settings. So let's get into that now. Back to the TREX zip that we've installed. We're going to select the most profitable algorithm, which would be the ethereum-ethermine.bat file. And in here is a pre-filled batch script, which tells Windows to run a program. These are fairly simple to write. It's kind of like programming in Python, I guess, or Bash, if you've done any of that kind of scripting, VBScript, etc. And the only thing you want to do here is copy that default one, make a copy, then you're going to edit that copy, and you're going to put in your worker name at the end. So, for example, on this computer, I have a 2070 Super. So that's what I've named it, and that's what will show up in Ethermine. Rate. I lost it, whatever. Here's where you put in your Ethereum payout address. Right now, this is set to a address on an exchange, which I do not recommend, but it does save on gas fees. However, those addresses are subject to change. Look into that. Here's your pool settings. I've changed this to US 2 because that is the West Coast, which is the closest server to me. I believe there's another way to specify a backup server, but I have not done that. So after you figure that out, here's what you want to do. You could double click this and start the files right away. You'll see my hash rate is actually dropped because I'm also recording this at the same time, but still not affected too bad, and I'm still recording 1080p. I think it's 60. So anyways, TREX will spin up. You'll see some messages like, I don't have it anymore. It'll connect. A couple minutes later, you'll start getting these reports where it says your average hash rate, the temperature of your graphics card, the current wattage that it's using, your fan RPM rate, or RPM percentage, I guess, of max. And this is some quotient, I'm not sure. I don't know what the other numbers mean. And essentially what you want to pay attention to is your mega hash per second. You want it to be the expected number for your card as long as you're not doing anything else. Now, if you do anything that affects the GPU core, it won't affect your mining too much. If you start using GPU memory, yes, your mega hash per second will go down. Anything you do on the CPU will not have any effect, which is why we'll be mining Banano later in this video. Okay, so we have your miner, you've set up your address, you've set up your pool, you've set up the worker name. Now what we're going to do is create a shortcut. Here's your shortcut. Press the Windows key and the R key at the same time and type this in, shell:\startup. Anything in this folder on Windows will automatically be run when Windows successfully logs in. So what you want to do is copy that shortcut or move it into this folder. Now, every time Windows starts, my miner will kick off and start running. Super easy. If you're away from home, your computer is turned off for whatever reason, you need someone to just start your miner, all they have to do is turn on your computer and log in, but we'll get to that. So, you've got the miner set up. Let's set up this guy right here. This is going to be like an all-in-one tutorial. So right here, this is through Open Hardware Monitor. And there's another program called Hardware Info. I'm not sure if that provides a gadget, but Hardware Info does have a little more insight into like things like core junction temperature, which you will need to monitor if you're mining on graphics cards with GDDR6X memory, like the 3080 and 3090. Those memory temperatures inside the silicon get extremely hot. And so what you might end up doing is something like this, where you buy, oh my gosh, G-lid thermal pads. You'll measure the thickness of the pad, and if for some reason your AIB card 3080 or 3090 is known to have bad thermal pads, it's worth picking up a set of these for like $7. You can replace a thermal pad in your GPU. You'll void your warranty, but your temps will go down if the manufacturer didn't put good thermal pads in there anyways. I'm using 3080 Tough from Asus, and they seem to be all right. I've heard people who have replaced the thermal pads and their temperatures did not change. Another thing you can do is buy these heat sinks. These are heat sinks that they aren't really fins, they just increase the surface area, and if you can place these on specific locations of the backplate of your GPU, which you can find pictures of or disassemble it, that are right over the memory, you can lower the temperature of that junction temperature, which will end up throttling your card at 110 degrees Celsius. The other option is just to drive down the power. So let's get into that. But first, after we drive down the power, before we drive down the power, let's set up monitoring, because that's important. This program is called Open Hardware Monitor. You can Google that and install it. Once it's installed, open it up from the start menu or whatever. Open Hardware Monitor. Open it up. It's already running, so I'll click hide show over here. It's hidden by default. These are the settings I would recommend you take. Start minimize, minimize to trade, minimize on close, run on Windows startup. Keep your temperature unit in Celsius just because that's what everyone uses. There's no significant advantage to Celsius over Fahrenheit. Changed my mind. Now, don't even get me started on metric time. Here in Open Hardware Monitor, you can view temperatures, CPU usage, etc. What I recommend you do is add everything to this gadget here that I have as well. You might not have individual temperatures per CPU core. I believe that depends on the CPU SKU itself and possibly the motherboard. I'm not totally sure. But everything in here can be added to this little convenient gadget that you can change the opacity and have it always on top so that you can always keep an eye on your temperatures. It's just very nice. I wish I had learned about this sooner. And the way you add this to the gadget is go to View, click Show Gadget, and originally nothing will be in there. And you'll start right-clicking on things like, oh, I want to monitor my fan RPM. Click Show in Gadget, it'll be there. You can also choose to show it in the tray, which is down here, but I don't use that. Recommend monitoring each of your CPU cores individually. The total is not really a good estimate of your entire thing. It's better to monitor each core, especially if you expect all cores to be running. Memory isn't super important, but I like to see it. GPU power, that's absolutely one thing that we need to add so that we can make sure our changes in MSI Afterburner are being applied. If you want to go a step further, you can monitor power with something like this, which is a kilowatt meter, which plugs into the wall, and then you plug in your computer after that. You can check the actual draw from the wall to your power supply to get a realistic calculation of how much energy and money you will be spending on mining. But spoiler alert, it's not a lot of money to do this or to run. I would say 25 cents per computer per day ish. It depends. Now what else do we want to add? GPU temperature, GPU power, and yeah, core temp is what we're going to be monitoring here today. Now, Open Hardware Monitor does not have junction temperatures. For that, you need to go to Hardware Info, and if your card has GDDR6X, and I probably misread that, misspoke that, you will have a T-junction temperature readout in Hardware Info. The way you access that is first by launching Hardware Info, blah, blah, blah. Click the Sensors button, and then scroll down to where your GPU is listed, which is like here. And okay, GPU temperature, hotspot, core voltage. There's a lot more information here than is in Hardware Monitor. It might be in Hardware Monitor, it's just buried and I don't know how to get to it. But this Sensors tab is great. However, this is a 2070 Super. GDDR6X is not in this card. So I do not have that temperature readout. If you are getting 70, 80 mega hashes per second on your 3080 or 3090, you need to check this temperature because it is likely throttling at 108 to 110. And you will need to either add Heatsinks, replace the thermal pads, get a water cooler block, or turn down the power a lot to keep that from breaking like 106 degrees. And then you'll be mining 96 on a 3080 all day. No problem at all. So let's close this out. Close this out. We've got your monitoring set up. Now you're going to want to install MSI Afterburner. The MSI Afterburner settings you want, and yes, this is an older version, so it may not look the same, but you need to check the Windows box so that settings are applied on startup. Next, let's go into the other settings, and dang, I really don't like this interface, but there will be a settings wheel on your version as well. I believe it's down in this corner, whereas the Windows key will be up here. Click the settings wheel, click Start with Windows, click Start Minimized. You don't need to do really anything else except for going to the Fan tab, enable user-defined fan control, and then this graph will appear. After that, this controls the fans on your GPU only, none of your case fans. So if I want to hear my GPU fans, I can crank this up. On my 3080 and 3090, I have a flat line at 90%. until 90 degrees, I have it turned up to 100%, but I should be monitoring it and stopping it before it gets too hot like that. Anyways, I don't have this very aggressive because the fans on this mini Zotac 2070 Super are very loud. Instead, I have bigger fans underneath it that push more air at a lower volume. Higher volume of air at a lower decibel level. Higher volume, lower volume, you get it. In here is pretty cool. This is where you're going to change your graphics card settings. And interestingly, I did not know this, but turn your power limit down to 75. Go look at what other people are turning that power limit down to. I assume it will be 60% to 80%. You will not see a significant performance difference in anything that you do, at least to my knowledge. I have not noticed it gaming. I've not noticed it mining. The only thing you'll notice is that your temperature will be very low and your power usage will be much lower. I don't see why people don't do this. I think it's 100% from the factory so they can hit their advertised clock rates. I'm assuming that's pretty much the only reason, but there's huge diminishing returns at a higher power limit, so turn that down. Just do it. Once you turn it down to 75%, you will see less stability at higher clock rates, but we don't need to go that high. 700 is fine for a 2070 Super. I think I have my 3080 set at like 900. The 3060 can go a little higher, like maybe 1200. And my 3070 is, I don't even remember. Look up what other people have had success with. Set your memory clock to that value. You could try running a benchmark system to see if all the tests pass. But if it's not that serious, just set it to what other people are doing, maybe a little less. Definitely turn down your power limit. If you're not gaming on it or anything, start the miner, see if you get an expected mega hash rate. Then 24 hours later, after that's been running successfully, go check Ethermine and see how many valid shares you're getting. There are still a possibility of stale and invalid shares, especially once the card becomes more unstable at higher clock rates and lower power limits. So, all that being said, MSI Afterburner, super important. Monitoring your temperature and everything else in your system, super important. Okay, what else can we do right now? Currently, we're set up to mine Ethereum. That's it. All you'll have to do is go to Ethermine and wait. Well, you put in your address and wait. And it'll start going. It'll populate your workers down here, which is very convenient. Your current hash rate is the actual accepted shares that Ethermine sees. The reported hash rate should mirror what you see in the TREX CLI in your command window. So both 3080s are 96, 3070 62. This usually hovers around 40.1 or 40.9, 41. And the current hash rate will go up, it will go down. Don't worry about it. It'll all even out in the end. You'll have peaks and valleys. It's not a huge deal. Okay, let's start the Banano adventure in episode 2, so this video doesn't get too long.